Part 1. Why some cultures worship hardship. The origin of productive suffering bias. There is a strange global paradox that becomes obvious the moment we compare high trust and low trust societies. Some cultures treat ease as suspicious. They see suffering not as costs but as moral credential. Work only becomes real work when it hurts. Success only feels legitimate when it is paid for in exhaustion. Ease is never trusted. Comfort is always one sign. This instinct sits at the heart of what we call the productive suffering bias, the idea that hardship is inherently more virtuous, more trustworthy, and more economically legitimate than the any form of low friction creativity. The tragedy is that this bias forms not because suffering produces better outcomes, but because suffering replaces trust in environments where trust is structurally fragile. Understanding how this myth forms requires going deeper into the evolutionary, institutional, and psychological origins of the bias. 1. Evolutionary roots. When pain was proof of loyalty. In early human groups, toil was not optional. It was survival. Food, safety, and shelter all required visible physical effort. But something else emerged alongside that effort. Pain became a signal. Effort showed loyalty. Endurance showed commitment to the group. Suffering demonstrated that you were not a free rider. In small tribes, signaling pain made sense. There were no institutions to verify your contributions, no system to measure fairness, no mechanism for accountability, so the group relied on the primitive heuristic. If you suffered for us, we can trust you. This early evolutionary logic never fully disappeared. In fragile institution of ecosystem, it resurfaced with starting power. Institutional roots. 2. When systems are weak, hardship becomes a proxy of trust. Modern societies vary widely in their levels of institutional reliability. In high trust countries, Scandinavia, France, and UK can rely on contracts, norms, laws, and transparent rules. In low trust ecology, individuals cannot rely on institutions to guarantee fairness or protect them from exploitation. Without structural trust, people fall back on the most ancient method of legitimacy, that is, the visible suffering. Effort becomes proof, hardship becomes credibility, pain becomes authenticity. In such environments, an idea that emerges easily is immediately suspicious. Opportunities generated through an ease appear deceptive, enjoyment look unserious. Ease is threatening because ease undermines the spoken rule, only pain is honest. 3. The myth formation. How hardship becomes sacred. When a society lives for long enough without institutional safety, it builds cultural stories around suffering. These stories are not accidental, they function as collective coping mechanisms. Other cultures began to believe suffering builds character, grinding earns virtue. If something is enjoyable, it cannot be economically legitimate. Wealth without pain is immoral or fraudulent. Ease leads to moral decay. Comfort is dangerous. This becomes a moral mythology, a full narrative architecture that explains why prosperity is rare and why life must be difficult to be real. The myth serves a structural purpose. It protects people psychologically from the instability around them. If the world is unpredictable, then at least hardship feels predictable. If institutions are weak, at least pain feels honest. If the system cannot guarantee fairness, at least struggle feels fair. Pain becomes the logic of the world. Hardship becomes a secular religion. 4. Fragility, moralizing pain. The most important insight is this: pain worship emerges from fragility, not strength. The more fragile the trust ecosystem, the more society moralizes suffering. Why? Because fragility requires myth to stabilize daily life. Hardship becomes the anchor that institutions fail to provide. Thus, suffering is equal safety, ease equal danger, pain is equal moral, comfort is equal suspicious. This is the cultural origin of productive suffering bias. It is not rational, it is compensatory. It is a myth a society creates when it cannot trust anything else. Why this matter now in the modern world, is produces more economic value than pain. Design, creativity, software the became a new wealth than grinding ever has. But cultures trapped in productive suffering cannot metabolize this. They keep treating low friction abundance as illegitimate, despite the fact that the global economy now runs on precisely these forms of ease. Understanding the origin of PSB, productive suffering bias, is necessary if we want to see how it shapes economies, companies, families, and entire societies today. That will be the focus of part 2, which is the economics of ease, why play and creativity produces more wealth than pain.